Hi, this is Cali Cat Tap Talks, and I have a guest. His name is John. So, how do you pronounce your last name, John?
You can pronounce it anytime you like, any way you want it to. But my dad always, who's kind of a pain in the neck about this kind of stuff, he was very fussy. It's pronounced Leister, like
Leicester,
Leicester, like Leicester Square
like
in
Leicester
jolly
Square.
jolly old England. I'm very square. Sometimes
You're not square. You're not square.
Monday to Friday.
What about Saturday, Sunday? You're like
I,
circle?
I like your beer sign in the background. I'm Canadian, so Canadians were very famous for our beer.
Yes,
I think
yes.
that's one thing. I think Americans do most things better than Canadians do, generally speaking. But I think there's one thing we do better, and that's beer. I'm
That's
sorry, but
beer. Why
American
you
beer
say
is just
that? We
it's so
we
because it's
we have some
stronger.
good beers.
Our beer is like 8%, honey.
Yeah. We've got some stronger beers now.
One sip gets you there.
Yeah, 10%, but some of us have to, watch what you drink because you get kind of a little buzz. So I tell people to
That's
eat
true.
before you drink, and if you drink all the time, then there's an issue. So just
No,
just sip it,
you know,
just sip,
I
sip.
think our vices are okay as long as we control them and they don't control
Yeah,
us.
yeah, that's very true. But we got good
Moderation.
beer. We got good beer, and we got good
Oh,
moonshine.
oh my God.
We got good moonshine over here too.
I had moonshine the night I graduated high school in 1983. I think it was 100%. It's a
Oh my!
wonder I'm still alive. I remember one sip and it's just like the
And I
world turned
know that
upside
puts
down.
you on your behind too.
Exactly.
All right. So tell us your story. I want to go
Okay.
behind the scenes with you. You have an
Thank you.
interesting background.
Thank you.
You write a lot of books, and that's
Yes.
because you lived it, what you are writing. So go ahead and
Sure.
tell the hindsight of your story.
Thank you so much. Well, I live in Vancouver, BC. I'm 60 years old. I'll be 61 this year. And I grew up in the 1970s. I was a comic book nerd. And, Canadian boys, we all love hockey, but I was an exception. I just wasn't into sports. I was ahead of my time. I think it's more socially acceptable to be a nerd these days. I mean, hell, a lot of nerds practically rule the world. But back in my day, if you liked Star Trek and comic books and sci-fi and all the nerdy stuff, you were somewhat pariah. And I remember feeling sometimes like I was going to get cast out, like Thor getting kicked out of Asgard. And so I wanted to be a comic book artist, and unfortunately I got lazy and I gave that up. And then after high school, I tried acting. I don't know how old you are, but there was a Western in the 1960s called The Big Valley. And one of the stars of that show, Peter Breck, he came to Vancouver and he started an acting school called the Breck Academy. And this is in the 1980s, and that was when the film and TV industry was really booming. Stephen J. Cannell, who was a very prolific TV producer, did a lot of shows. So of course, in later years, you had Supergirl and The Flash and Arrowman. X Files was shot in Vancouver. So I tried acting. I had an agent and I was going to auditions and I was doing some writing back then too. I was writing scenes for my scene partners and I was writing my monologues, and I never got the part. I never got cast in anything. I did a lot of extra work. I was an extra in Rocky Four. I was in Rocky Four, believe it or not, for one day. I actually got to see the fight at the Agrodome between
Oh,
Ivan
that's
Drago
cool.
and I
That's
actually
cool.
got to see. I know that was an amazing experience. I lived my whole life over again just to have that experience. And so Richard Dreyfuss came to our school. He was filming Stakeout at the time with Emilio Estevez. I don't know how old you are, probably before your time. And there's another actor, Gene Hackman, who was a huge actor back in the day. He was filming Narrow Margin at the time he came to school. So that was an amazing experience. But unfortunately, I developed psoriasis, and I don't know if you know what that is. I think something that I was born with, and it just got worse and worse as I got older. Psoriasis is a skin malcondition where some of us generate far more dry skin than would be considered normal. So I was doing this play. I was actually the lead in a play, and I was performing in front of some UBC students. And it was going very well. It was going fantastic. It was called The Zoo Story. And towards the end, I had a huge head of hair back in the day. I had very beautiful Goldilocks back then. And I actually ran through my fingers through my hair. And this fireworks display of dandruff exploded from my scalp. And I remember the audience gasped. Now, to give myself a little pat on the back, I actually stayed in character. Like I was actually didn't like I almost froze for a second. I was mortified. I was one of the most humiliating experiences of my life. So unfortunately, I allowed that to kill my aspirations being an actor. And my diet sucked when I was a kid. I'm a recovering sugar addict. It's a wonder I'm still alive. I mean, I was eating KFC and pizza and M&Ms, every Snickers bars. I weighed 235 pounds. I think I maxed out at about 250 pounds. And so for
250
30,
pounds? You
oh yeah, I
don't
was
look like
huge. I
you're
was
200.
bloated. I was a
Really?
Canadian Jabba the Hutt. And I've been working security for the last 35, 40 years. And of course, most security jobs you work, there's a vending machine every 10 feet you walk when you're doing your patrol. And so the temptation to eat out, to pig out, and to binge, just was far too alluring for me. And then in 2019, my life changed. And here's where the story gets a little bit weird for some people. I don't want to be pushy or preachy about this stuff, but I was able to develop a mindset that worked for me. And that's why you're interviewing me right now. I read a ton of self-help books when I was a kid. I read Anthony Robbins. Do you know who that is?
Mm-mm.
Awaken the Giant Within. And he's a motivational speaker. And he writes all these self-help books about manifesting and believing in yourself. And never mind what other people think. And never mind whether what you do makes you any money. Just do it, because to not do it would be a sin. But I never was really able to implement all of that stuff consistently. I had these windows where I take, like, I did kickboxing for a couple of years, or I would do some writing.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been interested in martial arts here and there, but not until I reached out to God. That's when my life changed. I came home from work one day, and I realized that I was spending way too much time by myself. Someone once said, "No man is an island, or no woman is an island." We're social creatures. I mean, we have to be by ourselves sometimes if we want to do things like write a book. And so after I reached out to God and asked Him to help me, I dusted off these short stories that I'd written around 2005. I created this character called Lee Hacklin, plug, plug, plug. He's a private investigator. He's my boy. And I had written these short stories around 2005. I wasn't even thinking about self-publishing back then. I just wrote them because I was bored at the security job I was working back then. And so I blew these pages off, and they were dusty and they were yellow, and the pages were cold, and I read them. And I don't know, Callie, if you do any creative writing. Of course, we're all our own worst critics. But I was reading this stuff. I barely remembered writing some of these stories. It's like, gosh, this is not the worst stuff I've ever written. I mean, it's not Charles Dickens, it's not William Shakespeare, but it's not total garbage either. So that was the beginning of my true life's journey. I started with Amazon, and it was a tremendous uphill battle to get that first book posted, which is called The Collected Case of Lee Hacklin, 1970s Private Investigative Book One, which was sort of an omnibus of my first few short stories. Man, oh man, what a headache. I was implementing or entering my banking information,
Uh-huh.
and Amazon was saying it's wrong information. And they go to the bank, they say it's right information. I was going in circles. If I didn't have God in my life, and my relationship with God, I define as kind of like Big Brother from 1984. Do you know that book by George Orwell, 1984? Big Brother is watching you. Have you ever heard that? Anyway,
I've
it's
heard of
okay.
that. Heard that.
It's not important.
Just to
And
let you know,
yeah,
sorry to cut you
please.
off. I'll be turning 60 this year, so
Oh wow, I
I
never would
am
have
from
guessed.
that Agent Scully,
Wow.
X Files,
60s and you 20
sci-fi.
60s and you 21. Obviously, I think you and I are living proof of that. Well, especially you. But yeah, so I when I posted that first book for the first time, this after a month, I was losing my mind because going in circles. I was constantly asking people to help me, and this is another important life lesson too, especially for men. We alpha men, or I like to think of myself as a quasi alpha male anyway, in a good way. I don't want to stereotype, but we hate asking people for help. Our egos get in the way, and when that happens, it becomes a roadblock. It becomes a stumbling block. So if I hadn't put my ego on the shelf and asked people to help me, you'd be interviewing somebody else right now. When I saw it on the screen for the first time after a month of attempt after attempt, congratulations, your ebook has been published. I lost my mind. I remember walking down the streets of Vancouver, and I just wanted to shove my phone in people's faces. Hey, look at me. I'm a self-published author. It was a very unusual feeling for me to start something and actually cross the finish line. Some people live their whole lives that way. Arnold Schwarzenegger is a perfect example, right? To me, he's the epitome of a man or a woman who has this like unstoppable Terminator-esque self-belief, right? They have a
Hmm.
goal, they move towards it. There's hiccups along the way. There's stumbling blocks. Schwarzenegger broke his leg. He actually had a broken leg for 6 weeks when he was young. He was thinking at the time, this is the end of my career. No, he pushed through. He pushed through. And this is an important life lesson. When we embark on a new journey, we have to have in our minds that in advance. This is what trips people up. It's like when you go to the gym. What happens when people go to the gym, right? They work out for a week or two or maybe a month with
Then
all
they
this
quit.
enthusiasm, right? They're excited, right? I'm changing my life. I'm fat. I'm overweight. I'm bloated. I want to get in shape. And it's great, but it doesn't last. And there's a reason. The reason is because they're going into the gym with the same mindset that got them fat in the first place, right? You have to change your mindset before you do anything else in life. So my mindset changed once I started to believe in God. Once I started to believe in God, because to me, God is the epitome of everything that is good about a human being. Then I started to believe in myself, and I started actually implementing all this stuff that I learned from all these self-help books. And I was in therapy for a year back in the early 90s. I had a really great therapist, and he said to me, human beings we have to like ourselves unconditionally. So, in other words, if you say to yourself, "I like myself if I have $1 million," or "I like myself if I drive a sports car," you might get the sports car, you might get the $1 million, but you also might lose it. So what are you going to do if you lose that stuff? What are you going to do if the government decides to take all your money away? Are you going to go back to hating yourself? Are you going to go back to living a life of self-immolation? It's a lousy way to go through life because your emotions are flip-flopping all the time.
Mhm.
It's like a
Mhm.
bipolar kind of thing. Like you're really happy one day and then you're really miserable the next day. And it's draining. It takes a toll on our physical health. And I believe, and I'm kind of all over the place here, but I believe there's a direct correlation between how we feel about ourselves and our physical health. I mean, you can feel good about yourself and still get sick,
Mhm.
obviously.
Mhm.
But I think that generally, the better you feel about yourself, the more, and it takes practice. My mindset didn't, I'm not suggesting that all this stuff happened overnight. It was days, weeks, months, and years. So now it's 2026, just to jump forward to the present. You can jump in anytime you like. So I have a tendency to filibuster. Sorry about that.
No,
It's a
you're
gift
all
of the
good.
gab.
You are. You're
Thank you so
very
much.
interesting. You're very
Thank you.
interesting because it's like
He's Pac-Man. Waka waka waka.
it's good.
So now it's 2026, and I don't know how many of these Lee Hackland stories. They're getting shorter and shorter. The first few books were about 100 to 200 pages long. They're getting short. Was it Oscar Wilde said brevity is the soul of wit? I see my series now as kind of like a long-running Netflix series, and I've discovered since 2019. I go to Starbucks every morning before work. I have my coffee. I open my notebook. I take out my dollar store pen. Boom. I don't have, and this is another important life lesson too. If you have to will yourself to do something, like you hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I have these affirmations that I have to
Mhm.
do before I go to bed." That's fine. Look, if that works for you, I'm not mocking that. I'm not. But for me, then this is just this is subjective. This is completely a subjective opinion. But for me, it's like, gosh, if you have to go through all these rituals to do what you want to do in life, then maybe
Mhm.
that's not what you want to do. Like Schwarzenegger said the same thing. He said, a lot of guys I work out with, they said they have to psych themselves up before they work out. He says, I never have to psych myself to work out. I can't wait to work out. And that's how I feel about writing. I can't wait to write. When I see the blank page on the table at my Starbucks every morning, and I open my pen or pick the cap off my pen, I get excited because I'm about to embark on an act of creation. And there's nothing more satisfying in life, again, in my opinion, than the act of creation, whether it's a book or bringing new life into the world, or maybe it's a table that you build with your bare hands, because we're not taking anything with us. These bodies that our souls are driving, they have expiration dates. Hopefully not today, but they're going to
Mhm.
conk out
Mhm.
someday. We need to have a sense that we've made the world a better place somehow. Because if we don't, then we're just going to go what are our thoughts going to be on our last day? Nothing but regret and what if? Oh, if only I believed in myself. Oh, if only I hadn't dropped out of high school. Oh, if only this, if only that. No, no, no. We have to live our lives in the present. And this is another thing. Once I started reaching out to God, my mindset changed in so many ways. I'm a recovering news junkie. I used to watch news all the time. I used to listen to all these political, John and Ken and Ben Shapiro and the Alex Jones, the globalist guy. I used to listen to Alex Jones every day,
Mhm.
4 hours, and it was entertaining and it was stimulating, and I agreed with some of it, but it was also driving me insane because all these guys, and I respect those guys, and I respect what they're doing, and they're following their bliss. They're following their bliss. But all they ever talk about is what sucks about the world. Just the mayhem and the chaos and the corruption and this.
Uh-huh.
And if you inundate your brain with all that stuff, what motivation are you going to have to achieve your goals, whatever they might be? You're not going to have that motivation. If you think the world sucks, if you think that there's no good qualities in other human beings, then the temptation to become an alcoholic or drug addict. I mean, I'm still working security. I work downtown Vancouver, and I'm dealing with drug addicts every day. And my heart goes out to them. I really do. I have tremendous compassion for them because they're suffering. I mean, mind you, nobody puts a gun to their head.
Yeah.
No, it's not like they're under duress to stick a needle into their arm and to light that crack pipe, but they're suffering so much. They're in so much emotional pain, and that's why essentially they want to die. They want to die quickly, but they want to die having a good time. They want to die in a state of euphoria, and I think that's why some people become criminals. You ever see that movie Goodfellas?
Yes.
Remember when the boy is looking out the window and he sees the gangster? He's like, "Yeah, I want to be a gangster. Yeah, that looks really cool." I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" When I was a boy, I wanted to be Superman. When I was a boy, I wanted to be a hero. I wanted to run into a school bus and save the kids. Like that's the kind of guy that I always wanted to be, and I like to think that I am a little bit. But again, this is that God gave us free will. We're not a race of robots. We're not even a race of races. We're a race of individuals. And we all have something unique to offer the world. And so that's my story in a very long-winded and breathless nutshell.
And I
Thank you
got
so much.
and no worries. Well,
So my, you know, my
so how
I
did you
feel like my,
become a writer though? So I
pardon
mean, you
me?
talked about, yeah. So yeah, what I know you said God inspired you and all that, but
Yes.
when did you say I am going to write this and I am going to publish this and I am going to be successful? Because you are very successful with what
Thank
you
you.
are writing and what people are buying. They want to read what you are putting in these little mini books.
I
So
hope so.
yeah.
I mean, the important thing, look, if I knew in advance that I was the world's worst writer, if God said to me, nobody's going to ever buy your books, forget about the Netflix deal, it's not going to happen, I would still do it because at the end of the day, I'm doing it for me. And you look at every successful author, you look at George Lucas, just as one example. He was pitching Star Wars back in the day in the 1970s, and I've read his story. I read his biography, Skywalking. Everyone he got turned down a million times. J.K. Rowling got turned down a million. They all got rejected over and over and over again until every best-selling author, someone thinks is total garbage. Your favorite movie, another person thinks that's just the way human beings are. You
Hmm.
only need a few people to like what you're doing in order to have a career. If a few thousand people you cough up $1 to watch your podcast, I don't know if you have a day job other than your podcast, you probably wouldn't have to do your day job. And wouldn't it be nice? How many people go to work every day doing the thing that they really want to do? Look, I respect bank managers. I worked in banks for many years as security guards. It's a hard job, tremendous. I couldn't do it. I wouldn't last half a day as bank manager. I would quit. I wouldn't even consider that job. And I respect the men and women who do it. But there's no 5-year-old boy or girl who wants to be bank manager. When we're children, the visions that we have for ourselves, they're pretty cosmic. We all want to be astronauts or movie stars. You
Hmm.
ever watch game shows back in the day? Remember when they had kids on as contestants and the host said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" "I want to be president of the United States," right? And the audience would lose their minds. The audience loved to hear that, right? And so what happens? What happens is some of us are more sensitive than others, and I was a very sensitive boy. God was ever. I just, I was a Charlie Brown kind of kid. I just let everything get to me, and I remember crying myself to sleep night after night. And I was just, every night, every day in my life, I had nothing. I had everything going for me. I had a good mind. I had my arms and legs. I wasn't the worst looking kid either. People were telling me, "You're a good looking boy." I heard that all the time growing up. But these feelings of low self esteem were just like this albatross around my neck that I've been struggling with
Uh-huh.
my entire life until 2019, until I reached out to God. The Bible says, and people ask me, "What's your religion?" My religion is John Leisterism. That's my religion, or John Leisterality, or whatever you want to call it, ology. That's it's a little bit of this. It's when you develop a mindset for yourself. It's like what Bruce Lee did when he created Jeet Kune Do, which was his martial art. He just looked at all the pre-existing martial arts and he said, "You know what? I like this. I think makes no sense at all. This is a
Hmm.
waste of time." Right? And he cherry picked, and then he added in his own, like, what a concept. He actually added techniques that he created himself. And so many people, I feel, and this is why there's so much pain in the world. The reason there's so much pain in the world is because there's too many people who don't believe in themselves. There are too many people who are so desperate to fit in. They're so desperate for other people to like them,
Hmm.
which I get, and I kind of admire that, but not at the sacrifice of yourself. We have to be selfish sometimes. Otherwise, we have no self.
That's so true. That's true.
Thank you.
Yeah, you got to. People need to look in the mirror and say, is this really me, or do I want to be this person?" No, be yourself. Enjoy yourself
Absolutely.
and live with yourself as long as you're happy. So I totally agree. So what's
Thank you
the
so
first
much.
book that you wrote?
Gosh, I can't remember right now. Well, the first standalone novel I wrote was called the Treehouse Avengers. That was my first quote unquote novel. My Lee Hacklands were all collections of short stories. And the Treehouse Avengers is basically a sort of a fantasy version of my autobiography. The main character is Clint Wagner, who's a 10-year-old boy. He's bullied. His dad is terribly abusive. He likes comic books. And he wants to be a part of this group of kids called the Treehouse Avengers. So these four boys that hang, I guess I based it on that episode of The Simpsons a little bit, where these four boys hang out in a treehouse and they read comic books after school. And my hero Clint, he wants to be part of this group. He wants that more than because he wants to be with other boys who like comics, because back in the day comics were kind of shunned. So the leader of this group says, "Okay, Clint, you want to be in? You want to be part of the gang? Then you have to do these 7 tasks." You have like the 7 labors of Hercules. So, for example, he has to fart in class while the
Mhm.
teacher's talking. He has to pull on the bra strap of a girl that he likes. And I don't want to give away the whole story. And meanwhile, he's getting bullied by these 2 terrible boys named Pug and Mike. And the high school principal befriends him and actually teaches him how to box. So over the course of the story, it's a coming of age story. Over the course of the book, Clint loses weight, he gains self confidence, he learns how to box, and so by the end of the story, these bullies show up. I'll spoil it a little bit. It's okay. It's okay. At the end of the story, these bullies show up. I'm trying to pitch the book. I hope, because actually, of all the books that I've ever written, it's probably the one I'm proudest of. But anyway, these bullies show up and they try to burn the treehouse down. And Clint saves the day. He runs into the kitchen of his friend's house and he grabs a couple of buckets of water and he puts the fire out. And then he gets into a fist fight with these 2 bullies and he kicks their asses. You're right. I would love to see this into a movie. I think this would make an awesome movie. Of course, I'm biased. I'm very biased in that opinion. And so the leader of the Treehouse Avengers says, "Oh, you're in. You're in, Clint. You're a Treehouse Avenger." And he's like, "F you. I don't want to be a Treehouse Avenger. I just want to be Clint White." And
So,
that's the
how
Treehouse
much of
Avengers.
that book is a part of you?
I'd say about 90%. The only part that's different is that Clint, when he graduates, the story ends in present day,
Uh huh.
and Clint. So I'm getting a little bit emotional.
You okay?
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's
So
you just
so it's
gotta
present
tough it
day.
out.
I sorry, I just need a minute.
It's fine. I'm giving you one of those hugs, man, from here.
So it's present day, and Clint becomes a very successful. I sorry, I just need a minute. I'm sorry about
It's
this.
okay.
I just let me take a breath. Okay, better. So it's present day, and Clint becomes a very successful producer and writer. So he's able to manifest. He's able to manifest his ultimate version of himself. And he's watching a YouTube video, and it's a video on how to build tree houses. And so he builds a treehouse for his kids, and that's how the Treehouse Avengers ends. Spoiler warning.
Well, it sounds like that's going to be an amazing book, an amazing time.
Oh man, I mean, it's like choosing. It's like who's your favorite kid. No parent wants to say, "Well, this is my favorite kid," right? Even though they might actually have one. That's how I feel about everything that I've written. I mean, look, I like to think that I'm a better writer now than I was back then, and this is an important life lesson too. And I'm sorry for being such a wuss. I'm
Oh, no,
Canadian.
it's okay. It doesn't
um,
matter. Canadian or no Canadian, American or
well, at the end of
whatever.
the day,
It doesn't matter.
people are
It's
people,
yourself.
right? We all have the same feelings.
Yeah, we
But
all are the same. We're
this
all
is an
the same.
important life lesson that I hope your viewers will get something out of. If you do something every day, it's almost impossible not to get good at it. Now, if you go out of your way to self-sabotage yourself with drugs and alcohol and junk food, well,
Hmm.
yeah, then you're kind of slitting your own throat. But if you pick up a guitar and if you spend 10 minutes playing that guitar every day, well, pretty soon that 10 minutes is going to become 20 minutes. And then, pretty soon you start to reprioritize. And so I've been writing, as far as I can remember, pretty much every single day since 2019. And that's why I like to think that I'm good at it. I
Hmm.
mean, it's the one thing that I feel really secure about. And so it's, again, repetition. If you repetition and you get it, and again, if you feel like you're living your life one step back, 2 steps, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, it's because of the way you're thinking.
Hmm.
And it's the hardest thing for so many, because we get into our ruts, we get into our grooves, and sometimes we have to hit that rock bottom place. We shouldn't have to, because time goes by so quickly, right? There's never a better time there's no greater gift in life than the present, right? But if you can change your mindset, and for me, what precipitated this transformation, or this evolution, as I like to think of it, is loneliness. I was just spending way too much time by myself. And so this lifestyle, this quote unquote lifestyle of being a couch potato and watching 20 hours of DVDs, a week, and eating KFC every night, and binging on candy bars all day long. It's like suddenly that I felt a sense of disgust. And not that I was judging myself, because I think that at the end of the day, we need to forgive ourselves. If we've harmed other people in the past, and I think that we all have, or if we said something, or if we did something, we try to fix it. We try to reach out to those people, but we have to have in our mind's eye that those people might not forgive us, and that's okay. At least we
Hmm.
made the effort. But
Hmm.
we have to prepare for that, because the Hollywood movie, the father and the son, they've hated each other their whole lives, and then they have it all out. They have, and then they hug, right? That's a Hollywood movie. That can happen. It can work out that way, but not necessarily. Well, I had it out with my dad, and we still had hard feeling. I said everything that I ever wanted to say to him that I was angry about, and it didn't work. It actually made our relationship worse.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have that in my mind's eye when I was a young man. So ultimately, we have to forgive ourselves for our quote unquote transgressions. Because if we don't, and I feel like this is something that good people do, if you're a good person, a lot of good people, like bad people, they don't have guilty consciences, right? That's why they're bad people. That's why they're bullies. They get off on having power over the people. But if you're a good person, and if you beat yourself up over one little thing that you said at work, you cracked a joke and nobody laughed, or maybe you made a mistake, if that's all you're thinking about, then you will not have any motivation to manifest your goals. And again, the temptation to indulge in junk food, which is what I did for 35 years, or alcohol, or hard drugs in more severe cases, it will become much more alluring because it's an escape. And that's why those people do that. And I understand their mindset, etc.
Yeah. No, I mean, you talk about bullyism a lot. So were you
Yeah.
were bullied?
Oh yeah. I was a bully magnet because I was a big kid. I was a big strapping lad. Very often I was the biggest boy in class. And like I said, I just wanted to be everybody's friend. I never stood up for myself. I let all the kids that bullied me were much smaller than me. you know and it wasn't until I started taking karate and I did boxing. Like I said, I did kickboxing for a couple of years. This is just my opinion. I think all kids should learn martial arts. I think that should be part of the regulars. That should be part of PE. PE, they have soccer, they have basketball. They should have like 1 month of martial arts. I know a lot of parents, they would lose their minds if you're very liberal kind of thinker, and that's fine. That's different strokes. That's their opinion. I respect that, but they're
Mm-hmm.
wrong
Hmm. Yeah.
because bullies pick on what looks weak. A bully doesn't walk into a police station and pick a fight with a cop,
Mm-hmm.
right? A
Yeah.
bully picks on someone who looks nice and friendly and open, and that's why so many people become a-holes. You ever work with someone that was really hard to get along with,
Oh,
that was really
absolutely.
difficult, right? We all have, right? Why are they
Yeah,
like that?
absolutely.
They're like that, and I probably was like that too sometimes when I was a younger man. They're like that because when they were young, they tried to be kind and it didn't work. So they say, you know what? To hell with it. People are a-holes, so I'm going to be an a-hole too. And some people live their whole lives that way.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the way they want to live their life, that's absolutely fine. But you and I and everybody watching this podcast, we don't have to live our lives that way. We can set an example. And I like to think that I'm doing that much more so than before 2019, when I was just content to stare at a screen night after night and wolf down 10,000 calories of garbage night after night. I will never go back to that life.
Wow.
And better late than never.
Yeah, you got that right. So
Thank you so much.
so do you write with the readers in mind, or do you write
No.
for yourself first?
Yes, 100%. Yes.
So for yourself
I
first, so
think
that
I think
readers can
I mean
understand you.
okay, here's an example. I
Okay.
wrote my latest Rehackland. I wrote a very racist villain character,
Mm-hmm.
and I almost used the N-word. I
Mm-hmm.
was almost going to write that down. I said, you know what? If I do this, I mean, Quentin Tarantino, I don't know how he gets away with it. I mean, his characters, he uses that word all the time in his movies, and nobody seems to care. And then somebody else says it, and suddenly their lives are over. So you know what? It's too much of a headache. I know it's just people are going to crap on me, and maybe deservedly so. So I just wrote, yes, I killed that ... ellipses, and then I
Mm-hmm.
wrote, he used a word that you can just use your imagination. So I will compromise a little bit out of sensitivity to other people's feelings,
Sure. Yeah.
right?
Okay.
But that aside, no, I'm just writing for
You're just
myself.
writing and telling
That's
your
what George
story.
Lucas did when he wrote Star Wars. I think if you try to write for other people, I mean, look, you might concoct a screenplay and be able to sell it based on what you think other people want. But if you're writing what other people want, I guarantee you that they're already tired of that thing. They're already right. It's like nobody was making science fiction movies in the mid 70s. Hardly anybody was. That's why George Lucas wrote Star Wars. Yeah, I think it's better to look at like what's not out there. And I think that my stories, sorry, my voice is drying
No, it's
up.
okay.
Sorry, pardon me. What's unique about my stories, and I don't mean to beat my chest about it, is that they're old school. So many Hollywood movies these days, again, I don't want to get on my high horse, but I feel like they're very PC. They're very preachy, like The Last Jedi. They're very anti-male. That's just my opinion. If you disagree, that's absolutely fine. My stories are old school. My boy Lee is a badass, but he's kind. He's warm-hearted, but he's absolutely ruthless. He'll pull the trigger, and he doesn't
Hmm.
feel guilty about it. He has a beer after. He'll absolutely pull the trigger on someone who's asking for it. He doesn't. A hero doesn't initiate violence. A hero stands up to violence, and it amazes me how many people they don't seem to make that distinction. They say violence begets violence. I think, what are you talking about? Hitler. Kind words were not going to stop Adolf Hitler, right? The only thing that was going to stop Adolf Hitler was guns and bombs and tanks and
Yeah.
brave men who were willing to throw themselves in harm's way. And men like Winston Churchill and Theodore Roosevelt. If it wasn't for them, we would be living in a very, you imagine looking out the window and there's a swastika instead of the stars and stripes. It would be, instead of the maple leaf in Canada, it would be a very different world.
Yeah. The
So
world would be different.
I'm certainly not an advocate for violence. I'm the most peace-loving man you'll ever meet. But there are some real a-holes in the world. The
Oh, there
Saddam
are.
Husseins and the Bin Ladens. There are some really, really horrible. And the funny part is they don't think they're horrible. They think they're doing the will of God. I think they're doing the will of the other guy. Again, that's just my opinion. So again, yes, I'm writing for myself. I'm writing the kinds of stories that I want to see.
Hmm. Hmm.
I like stories about heroes. I like stories about men because I'm a man. I mean, if I was a woman, Lee would be a woman. And again, I don't mean to be sexist. That's again, it's kind of a wish fulfillment. I mean, Lee's
Yeah.
basically me. He's an
Yeah. You're writing about
idealized.
yourself. I
Yeah,
understand that.
he's a much cooler. He's more handsome. He doesn't have rosacea. He's more of a ladies' man. Um, but I think that's what a lot of writers do. I think that's what Ian Fleming did when he created James Bond, or Robert
Hmm.
E. Howard when he created Conan. It's a wish fulfillment. But again, if you just think about it, then you're just fantasizing. But if you're actually creating something, well, then you're leaving something behind. And again, it's what we leave behind matters. Bruce Lee, my brother and I. Oh, my brother and I. Plug. So my brother Paul, my brother from another mother. We grew up together. Paul Bell. He started a podcast called The Canadian Bro Show. We have 62 episodes on YouTube. And he started, I'm a co-host. He's like Johnny Carson. I'm his Ed McMahon. I laugh at all his jokes. And our last episode was on Bruce Lee. We did a whole, Bruce Lee. We love, we're Bruce Lee fanatics. We were
Hmm.
boys, and to this day. And Bruce Lee was not only a great physical specimen, but he's also an intellectual specimen and a philosophical specimen. And one of his favorite sayings was the key to immortality is having lived a life that's worth remembering. If you spend your life hiding under a blanket, as I did for so much of my youth and my middle years, nobody's going to remember you when you die. And if you don't care about that, that's fine. God gave you free will. But if you do care, then you better get off your keister, boys and girls, and be truthful and be honest with yourself. I mean, look, if you feel like you suck at everything, but you like Star Wars and you like, Disney and Marvel and all the super, if you like that stuff, for God, I'm 60 and I'm just about the only one I know in the group of people that I work with and hang with. Me and Paul, we're 60. Everybody we know is much younger than us. We're the ones. You're in our age bracket.
Yeah.
We have podcasts. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
These young people, they don't, and that always blows me away. And I always tell these kids that I work with, because I'm the oldest guy where I work by decades, and I love my coworkers. But I say, for God's sakes, do a podcast. It's fun. You can talk about anything that you want to talk about. You might get monetized. You might get sponsorship. You might meet someone that you spend the rest of your life with. Bless you. So
Thank you.
you have to put yourself out there. And again, and I have to wrap this up pretty soon because I have another podcast booked for 3. Thank
Yes,
you
you
so
do.
much,
You have a
Colin,
lot
for
of
the plug.
fans.
Thank you.
You do.
You have
You do.
you have to be willing to fail. You have to be willing to look foolish and not feel bad about it afterwards. The other day I was at work. I was doing my patrol. I'm still like, I was doing my patrol, and I don't know what I have two left. I'm clumsy. I'm like Jar Jar Binks. I'm the Canadian Jar Jar Binks. I have two. I just face planted in the middle of my patrol. Like I just hit the surface like
Hmm.
a ton. And it was on camera too. I was like, oh, they're going to send me home. And fortunately, nobody noticed, or maybe they did notice and didn't say anything. But I felt a little bit embarrassed because it did in front of people. But you know what? I just got up, dusted myself, and continued my patrol. If there's a pebble in your shoe, that story. That's sort of a parable. You take it out and you get on with your day. But if you have a pebble in your shoe and you go, oh my God, there's a pebble in my shoe. Like two guys walk out of a bar and their cars are towed. This is a better example, right? Their cars are towed. One guy's like, oh, my car was towed, c'est la vie, right? But the other guy has a nervous breakdown. He swears, he shakes his fists, he's gonna send an email to the city, right?
Hmm.
He's gonna think about it for the next the indignation, even though, and some people live their whole lives that way. They will not achieve their goals. They won't, because they're so the pet peeves. They're wrapped up in their pet peeves, and their brains are focused on what's beyond their control. This is why I don't watch the news. When I stopped watching the news, my mind automatically moved towards what's within my control, and we need to think that way in order to feel empowered. If we think about what's beyond our control, then
Hmm.
obviously we're going to feel weak and helpless. And again, the temptation to just indulge in a life of vice will become very alluring, like a siren song. So that's my story in a nutshell. This is my journey,
That's your journey.
and
So
it's
how do
and
you
it's
how
the
do you
one that's
stay
right for me.
connected to your audience across all your platforms?
Oh,
You
thank
know,
you. Well,
is
I
it
mean,
called is it called Kobo? How do you say that?
sure,
Ko
Kobo's correct. I think so.
Kobo
Yeah.
Kobo.
So I'm a social media junkie. I'm on social media probably 3 to 4 hours a day, and so my Facebook page is called Johnny's Way. My Facebook page is John Leister. I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn and Threads, and I just post stuff every day. And I'm in a lot of writers groups, Facebook, and I'm always sharing other people's covers and reviews, and they're sharing my stuff. And sometimes we read each other's stuff, and I mean, it's absolutely wonderful to be part of this creative community. When I go to Starbucks every morning, it's like, you ever watch that show Cheers? The
Yes.
customers know each other,
Cheers.
and
Everybody
staff.
knows your name.
Everybody knows your name. It's wonderful. And I see people around me, and most of them are doing what I'm doing. They're writing in their notebooks, or they're tapping away on their laptops, or the thumb, and it's absolutely wonderful, because that energy. And here's another important life lesson too. You need to be with people who are like-minded, not necessarily politically or religion. I don't really care about I don't care if you're agnostic or an atheist, if you're Jewish, whatever you believe in is whatever works for you. But you need to be around people who have a positive energy.
Yeah.
I feel like that the more that because we feed off each other, it becomes contagious. If you have people in your life who are negative, and this is a controversial thing to say, and I need to wrap this up pretty soon, Callie. Thank you so
I
much.
got you. No worries.
If you have people in your life who have nothing to talk about but how lousy the weather is, or their pet peeves, or politics and global events. Oh, did you hear? Did you hear that 10,000 people died in some country I never heard of? Boy, that energy is absolutely it's life. It's like a black hole. The black hole is when a star collapses, right? And
Hmm.
nothing escapes it. Some people are black holes, and they will suck all the light out of you if you let them. So, if you visit your dad once a week at the old folks' home and you leave feeling miserable, but you feel like you have to do that because you have an
Hmm.
obligation, I would say, well, instead of visiting for half an hour, maybe visit him for 10 minutes, right? And just
Yeah.
say, I'm sorry, Dad, this is the best I can do. Or even maybe once a month instead of once a week. Because unless you have a really strong, we need to be like the Starship Enterprise. The Enterprise and the shields, we need to have the shields up all the time, because we're constantly bombarded by negativity. I mean, you walk into an elevator nowadays and there's a screen on the elevator that's going to give you some information. Is that information going to be uplifting? Is that information going to be useful? No. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be something horrible. It's going to be about a terrorist attack. It's going to be about a volcano that killed 50,000 people. It's going to be about, and most of us have feelings,
Yeah.
unless you're a complete
Yeah.
sociopath. So, if you're on your way to visit your husband, and you're excited and you want to have lunch with your husband, you walk into it and you see it, it's going to undermine the good time that you're in. So that's why I try to focus. I like to take pictures of flowers. I take pictures of flowers almost every day on my way to work, and I post them on my Facebook page. And I do that because I want to focus on mind as much as I can while I'm still here, because these bodies, they're going to
They
conk
don't
out
last
one of these
forever.
days.
Yes, if you want them
Exactly.
to.
They're
So
like
as we
cars.
as we wrap this up, how do people get a hold of your book?
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, well, my email is I don't know if it'll be on your podcast, but my email is johnleister611@hotmail.com. Time permitting, I would be more than happy to email. Or look, I want to make money doing this. I want to be a professional writer, but I love to share my stuff. And time permitting, I'll be more than happy to share any of my books or any of my short stories for free. My stuff's on Kobo. If you go to Kobo or Barnes and Noble and type in John Leister. Also, if you go to YouTube And if you type in John Leister, you'll see some of the other podcasts that I've been on. And as I said earlier, I co-host a podcast called the Canadian Bro Show. I think we have 63 episodes now. It was started by my brother Paul Bale, and he has another version about basketball and another iteration about real estate. He's a real estate developer. And I have a Facebook group page called Johnny's Way. I think I have over 1,000 followers. I'm a very avid reader. I took a picture of myself holding a book by a guy named Mike Madden. He writes the Jack Ryan series. You know Jack Ryan, he's created by Tom Clancy. He's a best-selling author. This guy sold millions of books. I don't mean to brag about this, okay? But I posted a picture of myself holding his book on his Facebook profile page, and I told him about my group page, Johnny's Way. And guess what? He joined. This best-selling author joined my group page. When I saw new members the next day and I saw his name and I clicked the link and saw it was actually him, I lost my mind. Like, this is the world that we're living in. We're living in a golden age. And you'll never hear that on the news, right? This technology gives us more opportunity that our ancestors ever could have dreamed of. So that's my story. I think I'm done.
All right. I know you got like 2 minutes right before you leave because you got another podcast. And I want to take the time to tell you thank you for reaching out
thank
to
you.
my podcast show.
I'm sorry if I talked to your... how are your ears? Are your ears still on your head?
Yeah, my ears are still
on my head. Oh, they are. Oh, good.
Yeah. My ears are still...
Cheers.
And if you can hear me, right?
Yeah, 100%.
All right.
Your voice is mellifluous.
What is your legacy that you would like to leave behind?
Oh, gosh. Now you're putting me on the spot now. My legacy is just... Well, my books are my legacy. You know, I barring an asteroid, or if God decides to smite the world with another flood someday, please don't do that, Heavenly Father. You know, give us another chance. I like to think that my stories will outlive me. I like to have in my mind's eye that my legacy, after I die, someone out there will be reading one of my stories and maybe getting something out of it. And maybe okay. My legacy, I want people my age to feel that it's not too late, because I know there are a lot of people who are our age who are just like, I'm done. You know, I'm 60. I had my 20s, 30s, and 40s. You know, someone once said, if you never make it by the time you're 30, you never will. I'm living proof that is BS. That is a BS philosophy. And some people hang on to that stuff because it's easier. It's much easier to hang on to what other people think than it is to think for yourself. We have to live our lives fearlessly and heroically. And my legacy is that I was able to make these changes in my life, and that it was worth it, and that I have a goal. I intend to become a professional writer. I intend to connect with that one person who believes in my stories as much as I do. And again, after I die, you know, reruns of Lee Hacklin, Private Investigator will be on YouTube. And if people don't pay, that's absolutely fine.
All right.
Anyway, this is my journey.
Yeah, this is John's journey. This is Cali Cat
so
Talks, and we're going to tap right on out.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.